Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar la mesa redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio. Señores oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda. Desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal, from the city of brotherly love, les habla Fernando Méndez. Nos acompaña Drew Murray en el día de hoy y Danny Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Well, Drew, here we are.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I didn't understand all that Spanish. I did a little bit, but we can't blame you. You did not teach me Spanish in high school.
I know. Who did you have for Spanish?
I had Mr. Cargan the first year, who, if you remember him, he only lasted a couple of years. He was great, but we were a bad class for sure. He was not ready for our class, like work and Mulrine. Then I think I had Father Garber.
Father Garber?
Year.
Teaching Spanish? Garber?
Yeah, I think so. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
Wow.
I know.
No, must have been somebody else. I cannot believe Father Garber.
Didn't he speak Spanish?
He never said a word. He never said a word in Spanish to me.
Maybe what? No, not Father Garber. Father
Sketches.
Sketches. That's who it was. Not Garber. Yeah, Sketches.
Yeah, because Sketches did know Spanish.
Yeah. I think he knew German better, but yeah.
He taught German. Yeah.
And then Father Ward, and I forget who else.
Anyway.
Senior year, I had two people.
Anyway, for our listeners who are puzzled about our conversations, because Drew went to St. Joe's Prep, where I taught for a few decades, and I was a Spanish teacher. And now I morphed into doing interviews and writing for papers and so on. So, Drew, what are you up to nowadays?
Well, this is the first year that I'm not out getting petitions for 3 years. So last year I was running at this time, I was getting petitions for state rep. The year before I was getting signatures for city council. This year I don't have to get petitions for myself, but it is an election season. So I'm a ward leader in the Fairmount area, a Republican ward leader. So I'm trying to get some signatures for some of our candidates, mostly judges at this point, and also Chuck Peruto. Besides that, I'm just working.
Okay, since you mentioned being a ward leader, how is the Republican Party doing in this city nowadays?
You know what? It depends where you are. I have friends who left the party. Someone I talked to, a friend of mine who lives in Center City, said he became a Democrat because he just wasn't happy with the party at this point. He said he would have become an independent, but becoming an independent doesn't allow you to vote in primary, so it doesn't make much sense. But if you go to places like Northeast Philadelphia and South Philadelphia, they're actually gaining members. So it depends on where you are in the city. I think overall, the Republican Party is up over the last year as far as numbers in the city of Philadelphia. I'm not sure about percentage. I mean, Democrat could be up as well. I mean, it doesn't mean that we're pulling everyone from the Democratic Party, but I do think I think we are. It just depends on really where you are. I think Center City, we're losing numbers. I think in Northeast Philly and South Philly, we're gaining numbers. So it's the Trump effect. I mean, people love them or they hate them. And there's not much in between. You either love them or hate them. I'm more of the in-between guy.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Because
I know how you feel about President Trump.
Because of the CPAC. Well, not even about my feelings. It's just what is happening to the Republican Party right now. So this is, you do know how I feel about it.
Yes, I do.
So anyway, I sent you something about city and state for March 5th. And one of those items is Pittsburgh Penguins have admitted to editing a full-face mask onto the face of one fan in a Getty Images photograph the team tweeted of their first in-person game this season. So that's people, with all the new technology, that particular case might be just about Pittsburgh and all that. But the new technology that allows people to alter pictures, to alter videos,
Hmm.
and it creates a lack of faith in anything that you see because
Sure. Yeah, I read that. I didn't find that to be a big deal. I thought that was funny, but
no,
it is scary. I don't know. It's funny you sent me that, and then there was a big news story on the Today Show this morning. I guess there's a person who is manipulating his face to look like Tom Cruise, and he's going on TikTok, and it looks exactly like him. I mean, and it's the technology, and people thought it was Tom Cruise. So it was literally, I was reading your article at the gym in the background was this story of the Today Show, and they're saying how dangerous this can be. I mean, it looked you would have thought it was Tom Cruise speaking into the camera, and this person is.
yeah. So exactly. So it I mean, this particular report about the Pittsburgh Penguins is that by itself is not upsetting. It's just the whole image that all images can be altered in some way using the new
Absolutely.
technologies and so on. We certainly do live in a new age.
No, absolutely.
Um,
And almost everybody's face is available over the internet too. I mean, whether you're famous or not. I mean,
exactly.
you're
Yeah.
my face. You can find my face and your face probably in 5 minutes on a Google search. So anybody could do it.
Yeah. Well, the next item on that list of things from the city and state is the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference on Thursday told Catholics it's morally acceptable to receive any of the COVID vaccines currently authorized. Uh, and I think that could be in response to the Bishop of New Orleans, who said that that he forbid people to get the vaccine, Catholics, because Pfizer was involved in research for birth control.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So there was the report I read this morning or saw this morning, and actually yesterday as well, was that it was the Johnson and Johnson vaccine that the the Conference of Bishops came out
Or
and
was it
said.
Johnson and Johnson? I'm sorry. Yeah, I
I think it
take
was
that back.
Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah.
They said it was, fetal tissue was used, aborted fetal
Right.
tissue was used in the creation or the testing thereof. I'm not sure, but what the Pope, I think the Pope said this morning, uh, if you can get it back, try not to get the Johnson and Johnson, but if that's your only option, then take it. There's no moral objection. I mean, so I will, I had it already. We talked about it already. I won't take the Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah.
I'll take Moderna or the Pfizer. So
Yeah.
as a Catholic and a pro-life person, I have issue with the fact that aborted fetal tissue was used. So I will not take the Johnson and Johnson unless there's absolutely no other way for me to get another vaccine.
Okay. Well, uh, we'll have to deal with our own beliefs in regards to this, and I think that's
Yes.
legitimate. Um, also, the Philadelphia City Council passed a bill to improve the transparency of COVID-19 vaccine um, contracts in response to the Philly fighting COVID scandal. Well, you remember what happened there.
Yes.
So I think it's like closing the door after the animals have left. But it's like a bit late for this.
Yes.
Transparency should have been at the very beginning, established that, because one problem we have with the vaccine is that a lot of people don't even believe in it. And so the more uncertainty you create, the more difficulty you have selling the whole idea of vaccination. So
sure, and oftentimes it's underserved communities who don't have that faith in the vaccine, and we have to have faith. It's our only option. I mean, and I do have faith. I mean, I believe in the vaccine. I think it's the only way we're gonna get back to normal.
well, yes, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves against Trump, the way he dealt with COVID and denial and so on. And,
I don't know if it was he should have worn a mask. I mean, that's the one thing I think he should have acted like a leader and worn a mask, even if he didn't want to wear one. Just wear it so people would follow him. Leaders lead by example, and he did not lead by example there.
yeah, it's not only that he didn't wear one. Is that remember how he mocked Biden for wearing a mask? He says he wears a huge mask. I've never seen anything like it. So it's like
When President Trump went off script, he definitely you could almost see his speechwriters cringing in the background. He liked to go off script, and he didn't go off script well. He really did not.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Uh, we'll talk a little bit later about the CPAC thing because I don't know. If I were a Republican, I would be very upset about that. With immigrant families recently released, the Berks County Detention Center may reopen as a women only migrant facility. And, from my point of view, I followed this Berks Detention Center for a long time. When I had another show, it was all radio, and Emma Restrepo and I followed this because she had a contact inside the detention center, a mother, a Mexican mother, and we received weekly updates. Now, they were supposed to be in this detention center, which was actually a prison, with their children they were held in. And they were supposed to be held there for 20 days. Jay Johnson uh, gave an interview saying that, yes, that was the law and they were complying with it, blah, blah, blah. It was not true at all.
Wasn't true.
This mother, one of them, was in there for 400 days. So we know what they did. If whenever they can, they would abuse immigrants because they were defenseless. So thank God for the Biden administration coming in, and a lot of the wrongs will be corrected. I think that was one. I mean, you don't have to be a supporter of immigration to be upset about mothers and children in prison.
Well, what are they going to do? I did read that. Are they going to, like, to me, that could be a possibility of families being broken up again. If it's only going to allow women, could that lead to more separation of families?
Well, that would be interesting to follow up on that piece of news. What happened to the children? Right.
Sure, because I do think that's important. I think separating the children from their mothers and fathers or fathers is wrong.
Yeah, it's either that or will only be women who have no children. I mean,
possible, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, I think the trouble is that when Trump created those draconian measures at the border, immigration from Mexico, from the South, was at its lowest historically. And now more people are coming in because now I guess there's increased hope that they will be let in with whatever claims they need.
But it's a complicated issue. I mean, President Trump, I think his administration, I think one of the first things he did was a zero tolerance policy, which was somewhat quickly reversed. And the problem with it was, if you come in the first time you were ever trying to come in, typically prior to that policy, you would just be turned away. If you got caught trying to come into the country, you would be turned away. Well, that policy switched under President Trump, and you were immediately arrested, and that caused problems, right? Because if you had children, then all of a sudden you're being arrested, and children are being separated from their parents. But that was reversed relatively quickly because I think they saw the issues with it, that they didn't realize they didn't fully vet what could happen when they did this. So, but immigration it's a tough policy. You're an immigrant. I'm fully supportive and in favor of reforming our immigration system. I want more immigrants to come here. I want people who want to live in this country, and especially Philadelphia, where we could see our population grow from immigration reform. That's a great thing. But I'm also opposed, for example, I'm against sanctuary cities because I do think, as President Barack Obama said, we are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of law. So, I'm fully in favor of people coming into this country legally, but people coming in illegally, whether it's crossing the border or overstaying their visas, it is an issue that needs to be dealt with. And I am fearful the Biden administration just giving carte blanche, amnesty to everybody, and that doesn't work, because then that just tells people, as long as you can cross this border, one day we will make it legal for you to stay here, even if you came illegally. And for not even coming for refuge or asylum, people who came illegally. So I don't know how you feel about that. Mine is probably a moderate view, and that's why people think
Yeah.
There's
Well,
a lot of
funny you mentioned that, Drew. But anyhow, we'll continue with this topic of immigration on the other side of this. We're going to take a brief pause. We are en Usa la Media de Roundtable. Les habla Fernando Méndez. Drew Mary nos acompaña en el día de hoy. Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital. Regresamos en un momento. Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio. Señores oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda, desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal. Les habla Fernando Méndez. Drew Mary nos acompaña en el día de hoy. Danny Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Well, Drew, we were talking about immigration and what's going to happen on a couple of things. The mothers that are released from the Berks County jail, what's going to happen to that? Is going to be a women's prison only. And believe me, when they say detention center, it's a jail, no matter what label they put on it. So we should find out about that at some other point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're talking about immigration in general, and you mentioned Obama, which Murguia, the head of the Spanish group, called Obama deporter in chief because he deported 2.5 million people. Anyway. And he had a different view of immigration. As you say, he was aligned with what you're thinking.
I think so.
More responsible immigration, more legal immigration, highly encouraged, but illegal immigration discouraged. And I think that, that's sort of a common sense approach to that. But it needs reform. That's one thing that it needs to.
Absolutely. You would think it's common sense, but I'll be honest with you, and I used to be a Democrat, but Democrats are not using a common sense approach. They want amnesty. Many Democrats. I'm not going to put everyone in the same bubble, but President Biden himself wants to give amnesty to millions of people right now. I don't think that's a common sense approach, and I also think it's very political because we talked about President Obama, we talked about President Clinton. They were both on the same page in many ways. So is the reason for this all of a sudden kind of promotion of illegal immigration by a lot of Democrats? Is it because that's what they believe, or is it because they want votes? I think it's because they want votes. There's no doubt in my mind about that. They think it's going to get them more votes if they promote illegal immigration through amnesty, because that's in many ways that's what amnesty is. I'm fully for DACA. I mean, kids who came in here with their parents, you can't fault them for something their parents did. So I'm fully in favor of DACA, but amnesty for people is just not the way to go as far as common sense immigration reform, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it was a Republican president. It was Reagan who did the last mass amnesty.
Is that right? Well, there you go.
So there you go.
There you go.
Republican
I was too young to remember him, Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Right.
I think I was in high school.
So, Drew, who hit you over the head that you became a Republican from being a common sense Democrat with a heart? You became a Republican.
I still have a heart, Mr. Mendez. I just, when I tell people all the time, I did not leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. The Democratic Party used to be the party of, fighting for the common person. And I don't think that's what they are anymore. I'm a capitalist, and the Democratic Party is moving further and further left into socialism. When Bernie Sanders ran for president, it's funny, I voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary against Hillary Clinton because I thought he was just some funny old guy who was a socialist. I was like, whatever, I didn't really like Hillary, so I voted for Bernie. I didn't realize that, 4 to 8 years later, all of a sudden, he has a huge influence in the Democratic Party, and consequently having an influence on me. And also when, we spoke about my pro-life beliefs earlier. The Democratic Party says if you're pro life, we don't want you. I mean, they came out and said that. The head of the Democratic committee said, if you're pro choice, you're not a Democrat. So I said, okay, I guess I'm a Republican then.
Um, well, um, pro-choice or pro-life? What are you talking about?
Well, they said I may have misstated. If you're not pro-choice, then you're not a Democrat.
Right, right.
That's basically what they said. So I was pro-life, so I left. But I'll be honest with you, Mr. Mendez. I've heard a lot of what you said or what you say. I think you're more Republican than you are Democrat. You just don't like you just didn't like President Trump. And I tell you, I tell my dad. You know my dad for 40 years. He's still holding on to his Democrat registration. I said, Dad, it's not the party that you think it is. It is a different party. It's not the party that my mom was a pull the lever Democrat. Never voted for a Republican in her life. It's not the same party. It is a completely different party than it was. It is not, and it's interesting as someone who's run for office, you're starting to see a lot of the unions, right? Unions that's 100% Democrat. A lot of the unions are starting to pull toward and endorse Republican candidates because in many ways, the Republican Party, at least people like me and a lot of people who are kind of considered moderates, are becoming more the party of the middle class.
I don't know. That's what the Republicans say. That's not what
Well,
they
hey,
do. I mean,
I received the endorsement from the FOP Lodge 5. So the police endorsed me in my last election. And in fact, and they endorsed a lot of Republicans, and they did not endorse a lot of Democrats. So, um, that's not necessarily a trade union, but it's a union. So I think you're going to start to see it.
I don't know. But then why are so many people happy that the Democrats are in power and not the Republicans at this point?
Well, a lot of people are. Well, you're saying a lot. Well, I think half the country was.
Well, more than
more than
6
half.
million.
Yeah, yeah. It was a very close election, and honestly, it was closer than I thought it was going to be. I really expected a blue wave because I thought a lot of people were so upset with President Trump and the Republican Party in general, but there was no blue wave. I mean, they took the Senate, but it was literally by a couple seats. They lost seats in the House. In Pennsylvania, I say we, the Republicans kept control of the legislature. So it wasn't this huge wave of blue like everyone thought it was going to be. In fact, I would say it was very even. I mean, I think it goes to show where we are as a nation. We are very divided, and I think it is divided very much down the middle. I think 50% of the people lean right or are far right, 50% lean left or are far left. Uh, I think did we lose Mr. Mendez? I think we may have lost him. So I guess we'll wait till he comes back, but not sure what's happening here. All right. So yes, we did lose Mr. Mendez. So I will just keep talking and on the subject that we were talking about. I think the country is very divided. I think half the people are fine, or at least we're happy, or at least content with the Republican Party, and the same thing as on the Democrat side. Although I do think the vast majority of this country is in the middle, very much, kind of like me. They're not far right Republican and they're not far left Democrat. But that is, it's those agendas that you often hear about, and why in the news, you hear, those topics. And I don't think it's what the majority of Americans believe. I think the majority of Americans are very much like me. They are moderate. They are either in the middle. They might lean left and they might lean right. But for the most part, we can oftentimes find common ground. But unfortunately, I think the people in the middle have lost their voice in many ways. So, I'm hoping we can become less divided as a nation, and maybe that's where President Biden can come in. I mean, he used to be a moderate. I am fearful that people like Bernie Sanders, who I think is probably a very nice man, but just I don't agree with his policies, that he might have more influence than I think he should have in the Democratic Party, because he's an admitted socialist. So it's not it's not that I'm naming or calling him a name. He is an admitted socialist. So uh, that is not something that is good for this country. I'm very much a capitalist. Capitalism has its issues, and we should always look to make any system better. And so we should look to make capitalism a better system. But becoming a socialist society, it's just not. It is just not what's going to work. So uh, looks like we're still waiting for Mr. Mendez. It looks like his internet is down. So I don't kind of thinking of what his agenda was, but one thing we can talk about. Mr. Mendez and I will be hosting a forum with the with the district attorney candidates this Tuesday at 5 o'clock from 5 to 7. So the three candidates are Larry Krasner, the incumbent, the current district attorney of the city of Philadelphia. We have Carlos Vega, who will challenge Larry in the primary, and then we have Chuck Peruto, who is the Republican candidate for district attorney. We'll have the three of them in the studio, and it will be a forum / debate, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's going to be interesting. I'm a Republican. There are not many Republicans, if any, who are happy with the current district attorney. So, I will be asking questions of all the candidates to answer, but I definitely have some questions for our current attorney, especially in regard to the violence in Philadelphia. We had 599 murders in the city of Philadelphia last year. 499. Forget the exact number, but whatever. It is up 40% from the time when Larry Krasner took office. Now, we've had a pandemic during that time, but the numbers were going up even before Larry Krasner took over. He took over in 2017. In the years leading up to the pandemic, the 2 years, those numbers were absolutely increasing. So, and at the same time, people say there's a correlation between poverty and violence and murder, and I agree with that absolutely. But the interesting thing is, Philadelphia is the poorest of the largest big cities in the United States. In 2017, the poverty rate, I believe, was 25%. But from 2017 to 2019, it actually decreased. It didn't decrease enough, but it was going down. So if you do draw a correlation between violence and murders and poverty, if poverty is going down, then you would think murders and violent crimes would also trend down, but they didn't. They went up significantly. Whether they should have gone down or stayed the same, you would think, but they did not. And I think our district attorney needs to answer that question. His policies, in my opinion, have led to some of these increased numbers. So, I'm going to ask him that question. I'm going to say, why do you believe that murders have gone up 40% from 2017 to 2020? And even prior to the pandemic, I believe the number was close to 30%. And then even look at this year's numbers. We're up 25% from last year, which was almost a record year of 499 murders. And we're up 25%. I believe we have 86 murders this year, where at the same time last year we were at 63. That's a problem. So it's not going down. And even though we're still in the middle of a pandemic, we are starting to open up. People are back on the streets more. People are getting jobs. So why are these numbers still going up? So it's 10:30 now. We'll see if we get Mr. Mendez back, but why don't we take a quick break? You're listening to Mr. Mendez's Roundtable.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar la mesa redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.
All right, welcome back. You were listening to USA Radio, the Roundtable. with Mr. Mendez. Obviously, I am not Mr. Mendez. I'm a lot younger, maybe not as handsome, but Mr. Mendez is having some internet issues, so we are both remote today. So we're not in studio. Hopefully, we can get Mr. Mendez back. So I'm just kind of scrolling down on his agenda that he sent me that we were going to talk about. But I do want to continue talking about this debate that we're going to have on Tuesday because I think it's going to be very interesting. You have Carlos Vega, who used to work at the district attorney's office for many years in the primary, challenging the current district attorney, Larry Krasner. I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe Carlos Vega was one of the longtime district attorneys or prosecutors who was fired by Larry Krasner. When Larry Krasner came in, he fired a lot of long-term prosecutors because he believed he was going to, or he wanted to, not believed, he wanted to reform the district attorney's office. I tell people I've been very critical of Larry Krasner. I'll be fair in the debate. I don't think Larry even knows who I am, to be honest with you, but I do know Larry's a smart guy, and I'll be able to, and I'm sure he's ready for some tough questions. And that's what debates are for, and that's what forums are for. The incumbent is gonna get tough questions, and if I did not ask tough questions, that would not be fair to the audience. So I'm thinking we might have Mr. Mendez back.
Hey, hello.
There you are. I can't see your face, but I can hear you.
So sorry.
Oh, there you go. That's okay.
Yeah, I changed locations just in case that's what happened, but apparently nowhere in my house there is internet. So,
well, while you were gone, we talked about President Trump and how great he was. So I was letting all your listeners know how great President Trump was.
How much I admire him.
Yes. Now, you know what I did? We weren't ready, so I started. Well, we have a debate coming up on Tuesday.
Yes.
So I went on to talk about that. 5 o'clock on Tuesday with Larry Krasner, Carlos Vega for the primary. Those are the two candidates in the primary, and then Chuck Fruto in the general. He's the Republican nominee.
Yeah, I did look at the message that Leslie sent with the topics, and so you have that list there.
I don't know if I do have it. She sent topics. Oh, okay. Just in general, criminal justice reform.
Right.
Yeah, I did read it. I'm sure bail reform is on there. But my guess is it's going to be very targeted toward, criminal justice reform because that's when Larry Krasner was elected. That was the platform he ran on. And even though I'm very critical of Larry Krasner, he's done exactly what he said he was going to do. He didn't lie.
But why are you critical of Krasner? For what reason?
Critical of him because of if you look at, while you were gone, I listed some statistics. In 2020, we had 499 murders. That's up 40% from when Larry Krasner took office in 2017. This year, we're already up 25% from last year, which was basically a record year. Murders are going up at a time when poverty in Philadelphia is actually trending downward. When he took office in 2017, poverty rate was 25% in Philadelphia, which is the highest of all the big cities in the country. So it is high, and it is still too high. But it was down to 23% as of last year. Now, some of these murders and some of this violence, you can blame on the pandemic. There's no doubt about that. The pandemic has caused less people on the streets, so and people are out of work, and that creates desperate times for desperate people. But his numbers were trending up quickly even before the pandemic. So I'm very critical of Larry Krasner because I don't think he's tough enough on crime. I believe in criminal justice reform, just not his brand of it.
Well, one thing that I like was the whole idea of not putting people in jail for very small infractions with drugs. So.
I agree with that. That's good policy for criminal justice reform, and it's good policy for and that's from a government standpoint. You're putting people in jail because they're dangerous. Well, if it's a petty crime, then if it's a small crime, if it's a non-violent crime, then they're probably not a danger to society. But that does get into the question: what if this is this person's 10th offense, even if they're all non-violent small crimes? There does get to a point where you know, people should be in jail if they continue to be prosecuted for these crimes. But I agree with you, and we do need bail reform. You know, I don't know the answer there though, because if you're rich, you can afford to get out of jail. If you're poor, you can't, and that's clearly not fair.
Right. Um, but think about the drug problem, which is it's the source of a lot of crimes, really. Um, how do you solve that? How do you solve the drug addiction? I mean, that's has been with us forever.
No, I don't know that answer. I think we need more money on a federal, state, and local level to help people who are in the cycle of addiction. The opioid epidemic right now is, it's as bad of an epidemic that we've ever had, and it does take money. And these people, it is a disease in my opinion, and many people will agree with that. Many people will disagree with that, but I do believe it's a disease. And even if it's a disease that they quote unquote, you know, brought on themselves because they started using the drugs, these people still need our help. But some people like Larry Krasner and some people like Mayor Kenny think the answer is a safe injection site. And I will tell you, I absolutely am opposed to safe injection sites. That is not the
Why?
answer.
It seems to
Because
be it seems to
you
be helping. I mean,
Well, in many, actually, in many cities, well, a few things. I think it normalizes drug use. I think you're telling people who are in the cycle of addiction that it's normal to take drugs, and normalizing drug use is only going to promote drug use, in my opinion. These sites are also, and I've read the studies. They will say, well, no one's ever died in a safe injection site. Well, that doesn't mean they're getting better. There's also in those studies, there's nothing, there's no data stating, okay, we had 100 people come in January 1 of 2020 who came into the safe injection site, and by the end of the year, 5% or 10% or 20% of those have broken the cycle of addiction. So it's not helping people; it's keeping them alive. But the study also doesn't state, how many of those people leave and or go to the hospital, because if you go to the hospital and die, you're not considered to have died in the safe injection site. So some of those studies and the statistics are just not accurate. And then lastly, as a community activist, as someone who is a leader of their community, no one wants this in their backyard. No one. Or so, and what they've done in Toronto and in cities around the world, it has been a horrible effect on the local community. So you know, I say if safe injection sites do become legal, I think a neighborhood should have the right to reject it. You know, without a doubt. We have RCOs and neighborhood associations in the city. If they ever do become legal, then an RCO in a neighborhood should be able to say no, because they will. It is an effect on the neighborhood, because where do drug dealers go? They go where they're going to go where their clients are. And if there's a safe injection site, they know exactly where to go, Mr. Mendez. So do you? What do you think? Do you think they're a good thing, or?
well, I really don't know that much on the subject. All I know is that people like Ed Rendell was in favor of that, um, and the current mayor and other people who are better informed. They think that might be a halfway solution, so to speak.
Yeah.
I have interviewed uh, two people from agencies that deal with drug addiction. Edwin was one of them, and I'm trying to think of the other one. And they they are okay with the injection sites. They don't think that's a solution, but that's is one way to deal with it and to help.
I've talked to a lot of people who've broken the cycle, and when I say a lot, not hundreds, this by no means is a study, or anecdotal. I'd say I talked to about 10, 15 people over, because when you're on a campaign, you're talking to a lot of people. I'd say if I talked to 10 to 15 people, only one or two said that safe injection sites are a good idea. In fact, the vast majority said if there were safe injection sites when I was trying to break the cycle of addiction, I'd be dead right now. They said it would have, like I said, it would have normalized the use, and I would have just kept using, because if it's legal to do these drugs, which even though it's not legal, but when you go in there, they've kind of made it on a certain level legal. It normalizes it. They think it's no longer wrong, and it's no longer dangerous. Even though you might go into a site today, if you're not near that site tomorrow or next week, you're going to continue to take that drug. And if you continue to take the drug, that obviously increases the chance of an overdose. But no matter what, heroin is killing your body every time you put that needle into your arm. It's just you're killing yourself little by little. And if it doesn't break the cycle, then I don't think I think in my opinion it probably kills more people than it would help, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that kind of addiction also doesn't recognize barriers like money. If you could have a lot of money, you become a drug addict.
Yeah.
Just as
Okay. Everyone knows someone who's been, I think, or at least most people know someone who has been affected by the opioid epidemic. So it doesn't have economic boundaries, like you said.
Yeah, this topic it's not a light issue, so it really deserves people more knowledgeable than myself to discuss that. You seem to be better informed, and maybe a whole show on that, a whole program.
No, you're right, and you're right. Mayor Kenny is in favor, but I don't know where he learned. I'm not a big fan of our mayor anymore. I don't know what he learned in high school, Mr. Mendez. I don't know if you taught him, but I like Mayor Nutter. Mayor Nutter, I was proud of. I can't say with things like safe injection sites and the encampment that I lived across the street from all summer. I cannot say I'm a big fan of our alumnus Mayor Jim Kenny from St. Joe's.
Yeah, it happened. You're talking about the takeover of part of the Parkway.
Yep. Yeah, Von Cohn Field on the Parkway. It's literally not across the street, but it's basically a block or two from my house.
Yeah,
and it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare all summer.
And in poorer countries, they're called invasions, and they become more permanent. In that sense, we're probably luckier here because they become permanent in other places in the world. Because
it's not permanent, but I'll tell you what, most people don't know this. The field is still off limits. You're still not allowed to use that field. There's a big fence around it because of the fear of needles. We talk about the drug addiction. They're fearful that needles and some sort of contamination is still a danger for kids to use that park.
Oh wow! See that I didn't know that, but I mean,
of course, yeah. And I mean, unless you live right near here or in the community, then you wouldn't know it. Yeah.
Unintended consequences of that, I suppose. Yeah, that's one issue that look how many administrations have struggled with that drug addiction and the problems of that. And I think that the roots of almost all these problems too have to do with poverty. And I was just listening to an MSNBC show talking about how hard the poor, mostly Hispanics and Blacks, how hard COVID hit because they lost most of the jobs in the service industry done by minorities. They're gone, and so slowly the economy is coming back. I mean, this is the first time in 379,000 jobs were created in February. So that's good news. But we're far from getting over this stage. And now that COVID relief thing, the 1.9 trillion, that's it's coming, but your fellow Republicans are trying to slow down the process in the Senate.
Well, they just think it's too much, and I look, I agree. The current number now is you would get $1,400 if you make $75,000 or less as an individual, and I think it doubles $2,400 for households of 150,000. Now you're talking about people, you're talking about people who've had their jobs the whole, some of them. Why I think it should be tied to, and even give more money than the $1,400. It should be tied to unemployment. If someone's making $150,000 a year as a couple, and they have not lost their job, and their economic life has not changed, then why are we sending them money? I don't understand that. I don't understand it at all. Um, it should be tied to unemployment. And I do think also that number needs to be lowered a little bit. If there's going to be a widespread uh, mailing of checks, we'll say, then I think 150,000 and 75,000 is too high, unless they've experienced unemployment. So I agree. We need to do something, and we need to get it out soon. And if it has to go at 1,400 for 75,000 and 150, then I'm fine with it. But it should be lowered, and it should be tied more to unemployment.
Yeah, well, let's take a short break here and usa la media de Roundtable. Les habla Fernando Méndez. Drew Mary nos acompaña al día de hoy. Y Danny Ramos controlando la mesa digital. Regresamos en un momento. Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar la mesa redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.
You're on mute, Mr. Mendez.
Oh, there we are.
There you go.
Te usa la media. Ahora, now that I'm not on mute, les habla Fernando Méndez y nos acompaña en el día de hoy Drew Murray. Estamos hablando sobre varios temas y está dirigiendo esto a Danny Ramos con su máquina digital. Bueno, estamos hablando sobre varios temas de la pobreza y la adicción a las drogas, a la cual nadie tiene soluciones por el momento. So, I sent you something about the guide to what you can expect from the 1.9 trillion Senate stimulus, which, what was that stunt with Senator Johnson having the whole thing read?
Yeah, I disagree with that. That was stupid. I don't understand the full reasoning behind it. Maybe it was because he thought that no one actually read it, which I would agree with. I think anybody who votes on that bill should have actually read it, but the stunt of making it read out loud over 10 hours is, I need to agree with it, but maybe it shouldn't be a 600-page document either, because I would ask the question, how many senators do you think read it?
I mean, none. And
none.
I got to tell you that Johnson himself did not read it.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
But I understand the reasoning behind it to a certain level, but he shouldn't have done
that. Drew, Johnson is a big clown, and he does not credit to your party.
There are plenty of clowns who are Democrats, Mr. Mendez. Maybe that's our problem. Maybe we have too many clowns in elected office.
Too many clowns in the legislature. I think so. Yes. But there are some figures of the recent past that are despicable. Among them, Mitch McConnell, and I think when the Democrats say that they should not do away with filibuster and all this stuff, it's like if Mitch McConnell was in charge, he would do anything, whatever it takes. You know, so he has no respect for rules, for tradition, for anything. He would do whatever he needs to do. And I think the Democrats should do whatever they need to do also.
Well, they've done that in the past, Mr. Mendez. That kind of started, the whole Supreme Court process and not needing, needing a simple majority. That was a domino effect of changes the Democrats made, years ago. It's on both sides. And if Democrats had more majority in the Senate, they would try to do things. And it's wrong on both sides. The filibuster does need to stay in place, and if the Democrats do change it, it's going to be a civil war. It'll be every 4 years, because I do think we are so divided right now. I think every 4 years we're going to have a different makeup in Congress. Meaning, right now it's 50-50 with the only reason the Democrats control is because of the tie-in vote of the vice president. I think in 4 years we're going to get back a couple seats. meaning the Republicans. Um,
Mm.
and we gained some seats in the House, so maybe we gained some seats in the House, and that's what it'll be every 4 to 8 years, depending on when the administration, depending on when the flip happens. It'll just, will be a pendulum that just keeps going back and forth, and we need to find middle ground and just move forward as a nation.
Huh. Well, I still think that Mitch McConnell is a despicable individual, but that's another story. There's so many of them in your party right now who follow Mr. Trump. I think the most abominable of them is Senator Lindsey Graham, who said that he was grateful and proud that Donald Trump allowed him to be in his world. That's a direct quote.
Look,
And
I think there's a problem, no matter how you feel about President Trump, the kind of cult-like following that he created. I mean, we talked about CPAC. The fact that there was a gold statue of President Trump and people were like literally like surrounding it. I think there was one photograph where I think people were actually praying around it, and a lot of people were showing the golden calf from Moses.
yeah,
It, it, I, it is. It's number
biblical.
one. It's weird and it's wrong. It's not about one person in a party. It's about the party itself. And I do think, my opinion is this: we need to move on from President Trump, whether you loved him or hated him. The bottom line is, in 2016, when he took over, the Republicans held the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Now we hold none. So as a party, he hurt the Republican Party, and I don't think there's any argument there. Even if you loved his policies, he hurt the party overall.
Yeah. Well, he was a Democrat like you, and he changed.
Yeah, he used to be a Democrat.
Yeah.
I think I hope in a couple of years I say Mr. Mendez used to be a Democrat. You're going to become a Republican, Mr. Mendez.
Actually, I was leaning more Republican before.
Before President Trump. Look, I think you like lower taxes and small government.
Right.
That's the big difference between Democrats and Republicans. There are too many other things have come into the mix that have nothing to do with what I call the policies of each party. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm pro-life, but I don't know why pro-life / pro-choice is such a partisan issue. I mean, let's face it, there used to be, if you were an Irish Catholic, actually, if you were a Catholic, you were a Democrat when my mom and dad were growing up.
Automatic.
So, automatic. If you were a Catholic, you were a Democrat. Now, not every Catholic is pro-life, but I think the majority, and if not the vast majority, are. And so they're not, I think a lot of us felt like we were pushed out of that party, even though it has nothing to do with small government and low taxes.
And responsible government.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the trouble here, yeah, you're right. It become the worshiping of an idol. It's like the golden calf, and reinforced by this CPAC meeting at which Ted Cancun Cruz spoke also in great reverence, speaking of Mr. Trump as the leader of the party. And I don't think Trump is going to be running in 2024. He may be wearing those pinstripe pajamas.
Well, I can't speak to that. But I don't think he's going to run, and honestly, I don't think it would be good for the Republican Party for him to run. I don't. Again, even if you love his policies, I think you need to look at what happened in the last 4 years and the fact that we lost both the House and the Senate, and obviously the presidency. And we got to say that maybe he wasn't good for the party. I mean, part of me does say, I think we did need a shakeup in Washington. I'm not saying President Trump was that shakeup, but the people who love him, and I have friends who love him. They don't care about his his mean tweets. They don't care about his poor communication. It was purely they thought we needed a shakeup in Washington, and I don't disagree with that. They said I voted for him to be a bull in a china shop, and that's exactly what he was. And even though I don't like a lot of his rhetoric, I do like the fact that he lowered taxes. Right? And we cannot look at the economy prior to the pandemic and say that we didn't have a great economy. I mean, unemployment was at record lows. The stock market was skyrocketing. All the indicators of a good economy were there.
Well, Drew, thank you for coming on the roundtable today. I wish you would come more often because I like this discussion, Republican versus Democrat.
Absolutely. Well, I'll have you on my show.
And we'll do a show on Tuesday. We'll both run in that debate. So,
absolutely.
Señores oyentes de Ustra Media, muchas gracias por su sintonía en el día de hoy. Se despide Fernando Méndez, Drew Mary nos acompañó y Dani Ramos manejando la máquina digital. Los esperamos hasta la próxima. Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar la mesa redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.